Welcome to The Full Experience, a show that takes whole seasons, whole runs, whole series of TV shows and boils them down into just 4 episodes. So we get a look at the character and the sense and the way that show was without having to spend the time to watch the whole thing. We watch the first, the ultimate, the lowest, and the last of each series. And this week we are gathered together to finalize The Good Place with the last episode, season 4, episode 13, Whenever You're Ready, which first aired January 30th, 2020. One of the last times me or my co-host Brian Brushwood ever went outside.
Yeah, right. I love the fact that on every full experience, we have kind of 2 narratives. We have how did the show stand up? You know, what was it like getting the full experience? But we're also kind of stress testing the very idea of the full experience. And in this case, Tom, I'll skip straight to my verdict and you can tell me if you disagree. I would say 100% yes, The Good Place. If you do the full experience, you can speak with absolute confidence about all the characters. You now speak The Good Place. It occupies the same niche in your mind. I will say that it is strange to spend 1 full hour, which is how long all the other episodes are combined, doing nothing but saying goodbye to every character. Like it was lacking the depth of experience with all these characters, made this a long and boring watch. Mm-hmm. So while it was an unmitigated home run grand slam for the success of the full experience, I wouldn't recommend it as a fun way to watch the show. And I'm really shocked that that was how I ended up feeling.
Yeah, I feel like, well, first of all, there's one very good reason why we exempt the last episode from being the ultimate episode, and that's because we want 4 episodes. But the side effect of that is these last episodes, I think, tend to get higher ratings from people who liked watching the entire show, and they're sad to see it go. So they give it a little higher rating because of that. And that's one of the 2 things I've noticed in final episodes during doing the full experience is, one, when they're very good, they tend to give you kind of a reimagining of the entire run, right? They look back and give you some of the best. And we got elements of that, right? You saw Michael go back to Earth. And even though we never saw that storyline in our watching of the full experience, it definitely gave you the flavor of, this is what it's like when the people from The Good Place go to Earth, right? And I was like, oh yeah, okay. So they're kind of summarizing that feel for you. And if you never saw any of the episodes, you still have a little bit of that appearance. There were other elements like that as well. The other problem that final episodes have is they are goodbyes. They are celebrations for the people who took the long road and watched every single episode. And you basically summed that problem up here is The Good Place falls for that trap. Not every final episode we've watched has. Sometimes it's because they just got canceled and never got to say goodbye, but sometimes they avoid it. The Good Place did not. The Good Place said, we know you've been with these characters for a long time, and so we're going to spend time saying goodbye to them. What I will add to that, though, is each of these characters represented a different theory on death. Because the Trojan horse of The Good Place is, what if you die and go to the good place? What is it like? Well, it's just a stand-in for what eventually happens, right? I've forgotten about the whole Jeremy Bearimy thing, but the whole Bearimy thing is a stand-in for like, okay, sure, you can spend eternity in the good place. But then what? At what point do you get tired of it? And so what could be seen as a show that dodges the question of what happens after we die by making a big joke of it actually deals with why it's okay to die at the end. Like each character has a different take on this. We have an actual Buddhist take on it from Jason. We have a Christian take from Eleanor. Yeah. And we have an atheist take from Chidi, honestly, a very, very philosophical take. I don't know what Tahani's take is, but I bet I'm just missing it.
Tahani's is the cartoon Christian go to heaven, and you just like she's on a hedonic treadmill forever and ever and ever, constantly taking on bigger projects.
I guess I was thinking Eleanor's the more Christian approach to acceptance of death.
Well, yeah, but that's just it. Is like if you ask a kid what they think of heaven, they're going to say all the candy I can eat forever and ever and ever, and that's what Tahani ends up being.
You know what? Now we're talking about it out loud, Tahani seems more like reincarnation.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah. And as a matter of fact, that's probably almost certainly what they were going for. Is now she's a woodworker. Now she's a garage or a pavement sealer.
But that moment when they all decided, you know what, I'm at peace. I've done everything. I'm ready to just disperse myself back into the universe. That was very poignant. It was a long time between them, but I thought those were handled very, very well. I feel like they did a really good job of saying, okay, but the real question is, can we accept death without knowing what happens? None of them know what actually happens when they walk through that doorway. And that was the really, like, to me, that was the really good punch of these episodes, even if they did sort of overindulge in saying goodbye to them.
Yeah. It was, by the time the first party was over, I remember thinking, because I know how this goes, I was like, 4 more of these, huh? All right.
Do you not? You didn't. It doesn't sound like you felt the same impact at the door that I did. Of like, but now we're getting the real issue of all of this, which is what happens when you go to the unknown? How do you accept going into the unknown like that?
That is how I felt when I watched all
the
of
first
the
time.
And I think if you have the depth of time with the characters and heard all of the philosophical lessons, you get all the references and callbacks and all of that stuff. You understand with just a quick nod to the trolley problem. It's like, all of these very short 3-syllable phrases suddenly mean something to you. But absent all of that, it read as laborious. And that's me sort of trying to squint and see everything through a full experience viewer's eyes. I will point out that I remember this when I saw it the first time, and it is a fact that when it comes to narratives, we remember the beginnings and we always remember the ends. Sometimes we remember the bits in between, and I don't know why, Tom, they just failed so hard to stick the landing on that last line from Michael. They gave too much, like it was a casual aside from the first season that he wanted to be a human and do things like thing A, thing B, and say, take it sleazy or whatever. But at the end, they give this big breathless, and he even puffs it up saying, with all my wisdom and ancient knowledge I bestow upon you, take it sleazy. And then the guy reacts the way I assume the audience did, which was all right. And then even then, I was fully caught up on the show when this happened, and I remember thinking, oh, I think that was a reference to a season 1 thing. Like, I don't know why, because they're so good at this. I don't know why they did it that way or who they did it that way for.
Few thoughts there. One is totally forgot that was the thing he said. So in this watching, I was not in that mindset. 2, knowing that sounds like they just overindulged in the goodbye thing. Like, everybody knows Michael wanted to say this, so let's have him finally say it, and we'll go out on a little bit of fan service. 3, not remembering that, I was also a little confused. And I'm like, and in my mind, I was like, I'm always trying to solve for X. I'm like, well, I guess what they're going for is Michael is now all of them. He's wise, he's dumb, he's Eleanor, and so he's living like they were, and we shouldn't take things too seriously, because look, Michael isn't, even with all his knowledge, taking it too seriously. But I'll admit, it's a bit of a stretch.
Yeah. Amos, did you watch all these? Hello, Amos. Are you there? It's me, Brian.
It takes a second to click all the buttons.
It's me, Brian.
I did, and I got a lot of the feelings that Brian did, that it was kind of just a slow march. And while I was watching this, I remembered that this is like the third ending to this season.
Yeah.
You know, this is not the first time they've ended this season. So a lot of that came back. I was ultimately satisfied with it. Like I do enjoy how everybody had their own little, their individual takes on how and when they wanted to cross through the door. And I'd forgotten about the Jason thing, about him popping back up out of nowhere. Yeah, I enjoyed it, but yeah, this was definitely, if I hadn't seen the whole show just last year, there's a lot in this episode that I would have missed, that they kind of dug in pretty hard.
Yeah, the return to Earth, the fact that there's the judge doing the hearings and that they've redone the point system so that people can get out of hell. Because I'll be honest, having not seen it, I don't remember for sure, but vaguely I recollect that there was something where no one was in the good place, and so that was their big victory in saving humanity.
Yeah, that did come up at some point during the full run of the show. Also. But even then, looking at it through the full experience lens, it's like, I think it's pretty apparent instantly that you're like, oh, I get it. The system wasn't Doug Forsett the guy there, and now the space is occupied by these four. They must have changed all of heaven. And then sure enough, a character says, well, you did just reinvent all of heaven.
Yeah.
Right.
It was interesting to see Doug reel too. Yeah.
And during the show, they did mention how the points system had gotten skewed so bad that like no one was making it to heaven. Yeah, to the good place. Everybody was going to the bad place.
So they did. That's where I got that.
Yeah,
then. Yeah. There was a Leftovers reference.
Yeah. Which, by the way, Leftovers got really, really good. It was a fine first season, but the next two seasons were just fabulous, I thought.
Yeah. A Where's the Beef reference, which was dated then and feels even more dated now. Did you catch the judge wearing the East Dillon High School?
Is that
from Friday Night Lights? She was wearing the East Dillon High School shirt. Yeah.
No, I was too busy hearing her talk about podcasts.
Yes.
Very, very prescient observation that they just keep coming. There's more of them. And
that felt not dated, even though it should be dated at this point.
Yeah. No, as a matter of fact, I was talking to a fellow podcaster who was saying like something my podcast in this increasingly competitive landscape, like you could tell he's having, stuff nick on his heels. I think that us early movers enjoyed a lot of runway of being able to get fat and happy, and now all of a sudden our niche is getting a little bit crowded,
a little squeezed. Yeah,
we have to fight for our territory.
This may be why they decided to end on Take It Sleazy. It does feel like they like to finish on a joke, except for the parts where they went through the door. They didn't end on a joke with people going through the door. They kept that serious.
Also, bless their hearts for not making us watch any kind of CG effects.
Yes. No, that was a great choice. Like, you don't get to see people die, really. You don't see, if anything happens after death, you don't see it. So that, to me, was a good choice. But Janet saying all these profound things to Michael about his time on Earth and really sage advice. But the final thing being, and don't get car rental insurance. It's a scam when you rent a car. I was like, that struck me as funny and I liked it. I'm like, oh, maybe that's what they were going with at the very end with Michael. I don't know.
Yeah. Well,
all right, folks, that is it then. Any other thoughts on The Good Place, the full experience?
No. Yes, it passes the full experience, but we continue to discover new things like I almost wish it didn't pass the full experience.
I don't feel like it's a pass fail with the full experience so much as, do you feel like you got the essence of the show? That's what we're trying to do, is like, can you talk knowledgeably and say like, and understand what people mean when they reference the show? And I think it passes on that.
Oh yeah. And I think the phrase that when we first kicked it off is like, have you pretty much watched the show? Yeah. You definitely pretty much have watched it if you've given it the full experience.
Yeah,
all right, that is it. Sorry,
this one in particular, we missed the second and third seasons, which were kind of a lot of build up to this last episode. So by watching this last episode, we kind of kind of recovered from
It was catch
skipping
up.
2
Yeah.
of the 4 seasons.
That happens a lot. Seems
Yeah,
like.
I think it
Oh
worked
yeah,
out.
and, we also just to throw it in there, we got to see non-actors acting.
Oh, right. Like actual philosophers. Yeah.
Yeah.
Always fun.
Always just a giant press release in the middle of a show.
Always fun for the writers' room who wanted to do that.
There it is.
Yep. And I don't begrudge it to him one little bit. So there you go. That is the good place. If you're excited for the next full experience to kick off, give it a minute. We will be discussing on After Talk what our next full experience should be. However, we will have a full experience next week, and it's a little bit of a special case because it's just one episode of the entire season of Section 31, which was supposed to be a television series, but instead they made one episode and called it a movie. We have not watched it. We have heard it's bad. We have also heard that maybe it should have been a series instead of trying to condense it into a movie. But we are going to watch the first, ultimate, lowest, and last episodes of Section 31 in the one episode movie that they have released. So that's what we'll be talking about on the full experience next week, Section 31. If you want After Talk to find out what's coming after that, if you want actual spoiler in time, the old-fashioned spoiler in time, all of that is available in After Talk. Patreon.com/Cordkillers. We'll see you next time.
Maybe.